The morning I got the wedding invitation, I already knew I was going to go. That was the problem. It arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored envelope, Paige's handwriting on the front, the loopy, unhurried kind that took up more space than it needed to. The same handwriting she'd used on birthday cards and grocery lists, and the one note she'd left on my windshield 4 years ago that said only, "You forgot your jacket at my place again. You're a disaster. Here's your jacket." The envelope had a small candy tucked inside, spearmint, her signature move. She'd been putting candy in envelopes since college, back when she decided that bad news was easier to take with something sweet in your hand. I sat with it on my kitchen counter for 20 minutes. I did not open it. I already knew what it said. I opened it anyway. Paige Dalton and Ryan Cowell request the pleasure of your company. I read it twice. Then I put it on the counter next to my coffee and went to work and designed a very structurally sound parking garage for 6 hours, which is the kind of productive thing a man does when he is not thinking about something at all. My name is Caleb Hayes. I'm 33 years old. I'm an architect in Asheville, North Carolina, which means I spend my days figuring out how to make things hold together under pressure. I am, professionally, very good at this. Personally, the track record is spottier. 3 years ago, a woman named Claire decided I was the kind of person she could love for exactly 14 months before realizing she wanted something louder. She wasn't wrong about what she wanted. She was just wrong about me having it. She left on a Thursday in November, and I thanked her for the clarity, and I meant it, and I was fine by December. That's what I told everyone. That's mostly what I told myself. The part I didn't tell anyone. The part that lived in the drawer with the takeout menus and the dead batteries I kept meaning to throw away was that after Claire, I had made a quiet decision. Not dramatic, just no more opening doors I couldn't close cleanly. No more letting things accumulate past the point where losing them would cost something real. Which was all very reasonable as personal policies go, until Paige Dalton. I'd known her for 7 years. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party, where she arrived 40 minutes late, handed the host a bottle of wine and a bag of sour gummies, and explained with complete sincerity that she had stopped to help a stranger jumpstart a car and she hoped that was okay. The host said that was fine. Paige said she also might have promised the stranger she'd look up his symptoms later because he seemed worried about something. The host stared at her. Paige shrugged. She was a pharmacist. It was just what she did. I knew I was in trouble approximately 3 minutes after that. She was the kind of person who remembered things, not big things. Everyone remembered big things, small things, the way you take your coffee, the name of your cat's vet, the fact that you'd mentioned once, 8 months ago, that you were stressed about a project deadline, and now it was deadline week, and she was texting, "How's the building going? Do you need food?" She kept candy in every bag she owned. She said it was for patients who had bad news delivered at the pharmacy counter, but I had watched her hand spearmint to a crying stranger in a parking lot, and a fidgeting kid at a bank, and once, memorably, to a man arguing loudly on a phone outside a coffee shop, just set it on the table beside him without a word, and walked away. I told her once that she was the only person I knew who weaponized kindness. She said, "It's not a weapon if it actually helps." I didn't have a response for that. I rarely did. Ryan Cowell came along 2 years after I met her. He was a contractor, solid, genuinely decent, laughed at the right moments, showed up when he said he would. He was, by every observable measure, a good man. I had no legitimate complaint about Ryan Cowell. This made disliking him considerably harder, so instead, I did something more sophisticated. I told myself I didn't dislike him at all, and I was almost convincing. He proposed on a Tuesday night in March. Paige called me at 11:15 to tell me, her voice doing the thing it did when she was happy and trying not to take up too much space with it, slightly too steady, the words coming a little too carefully. "He proposed," she said. "I heard." I said, "You just told me." I said yes. I inferred. A pause. "Are you okay?" "I'm great. I'm happy for you." Another pause, the kind that knew something. "Caleb." "Paige, I need you to be actually happy for me. Not architecture happy, where everything looks fine from the outside and the structure is technically sound." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Even then, even at 11:15 on a Tuesday with a piece of information I was not ready for, she made me laugh. "I'm happy for you," I said, and this time I put something real behind it. Not all of what was real, but enough. She said, "Good. Because I need you at this wedding, Caleb. I need one person there who will tell me if I have lipstick on my teeth. That's what Marcus is for. Marcus will tell me I look great, even if I'm actively on fire. I need you." I told her I'd be there. I meant it. I put the phone down and sat in my kitchen for a long time in the specific quiet of a man who has just confirmed something he already knew and is now figuring out what to do with the confirmation. I did not do anything useful with it. I added it to the drawer with the takeout menus and the dead batteries, right next to the Claire policy, and I kept building things. Nay. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I put it in the drawer. Not the takeout drawer, a different one. The one with the good scissors and the tape and the things I was actually going to use someday. I'm not sure what that says about me. Probably something I'd rather not examine before breakfast. The wedding was on a Saturday in September, at a small chapel outside Asheville, with white wooden pews and the kind of light that comes through old windows in the late afternoon and makes everything look like it was designed by someone who understood what they were doing. The kind of building, honestly, that I would have been pleased to have designed myself. I arrived early, which is what I do when I'm nervous. I control the variables I can control. I found a seat 4 rows back on the groom's side, which felt like the appropriately neutral position for a man in my particular situation. I straightened my tie. I looked at the program. I noted the hymns. I was, externally, completely fine. Marcus slid into the pew beside me 7 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start. Marcus Reeves, our mutual friend, the housewarming host, the man who had introduced me to Paige 7 years ago by saying, "You two should meet. I can't explain why. Just trust me." Settled in with the specific energy of someone who had an opinion and was deciding whether to voice it. "You look like a man about to watch a building he designed to get demolished," he said. "I look like a man attending a wedding. Those aren't mutually exclusive." I didn't answer. The organist started something slow and inevitable. Paige came down the aisle on her father's arm in a dress that was exactly what you'd expect from a woman who kept spearmint in her bag at all times. Simple, no excess. Nothing that wasn't there for a reason. She was looking straight ahead with the particular focus of someone who is being brave in public and knows it. She didn't look at me. I was 4 rows back on the wrong side. There was no reason she would. She looked. I was not going to think about how she looked. I looked at the program. The hymns were traditional. Good choices structurally. Ryan didn't come. It started with a murmur at the 10-minute mark. By 20, Paige's maid of honor, a woman named Jess, had disappeared through a side door twice. By 30, the murmurs had graduated to whispers, and the whispers had that particular edge where you could tell people were starting to enjoy themselves in a way they would be ashamed of later. I watched Paige stand at the altar. She hadn't moved. Her bouquet, white peonies, her mother had mentioned them 3 times leading up to the wedding, was perfectly still in her hands. Her face was perfectly still. That was the thing about Paige, the thing most people didn't notice until they'd known her long enough. When she was most damaged, she went the most quiet, not crying, not collapsing, just a particular stillness, like she was waiting for the world to catch up to what she'd already figured out. Jess came back with a phone. Paige read whatever was on it. I watched the stillness go a degree deeper. Later, Jess told me what the message said. 1 sentence. Ryan's handwriting, in the way people write when they've been composing something for hours and landed on the bluntest version. I can't marry someone who keeps looking at him. That was it. No name, no explanation, just him. Someone behind me said, in a voice that carried, "Stood up at the altar, rough." A small, terrible laugh from somewhere to the left. I don't remember standing up. I remember the sound of the pew, and then I was in the aisle, and I was walking, and the chapel had gone very quiet in the way that happens when something unexpected interrupts something expected, and everyone is trying to determine if it's a disaster or not. I walked up to the altar. Paige saw me coming. Her eyes went from blank to something harder to name. Caleb. Her voice was barely there. I stepped up beside her. The minister looked at me with the expression of a man who had officiated a great many weddings and never once prepared for this. I leaned slightly toward Paige. Not performing, just close enough to be heard only by her. "You don't have to stand here alone," I said. "Say the word and I'll leave. But if you need someone to stand next to, I'm here." She looked at me for a moment that felt considerably longer than it was. "Why?" she asked. It was the right question. It was also the question I did not have a clean answer for. Not one I was ready to say out loud in a chapel in front of 200 people, one of whom was Marcus, who would absolutely remember every word. "Because you'd have done it for me," I said, "and because you don't deserve to be laughed at." She looked at the peonies in her hands, then at the empty space where Ryan was supposed to be, then back at me. She reached into the small bag her maid of honor was holding and produced, without any apparent irony, a spearmint candy. She held it out to me. I took it. I didn't know what else to do. Okay, she said. Stay. I turned to face the chapel. 200 people, half of them with phones out, all of them waiting to see what a man who had just walked to the altar uninvited was going to do next. I turned to Father Connolly. I kept my voice quiet enough to be respectful and loud enough for the first 4 rows to hear. If she needs someone to stand with her today, I said, I'll stand with her. If she needs a husband, I'll marry her. The chapel did not erupt. It went very still, which is the thing that happens when something lands and people need a moment to catch up to it. Father Connolly looked at Paige. Paige looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before. Not the stillness, not the real smile, not the careful pharmacist look. Something older than all of those. Something that had apparently been waiting for someone to say exactly that sentence out loud in front of everyone. So what happened next was not a wedding. The minister, a practical man named Father Connolly, who had been doing this for 31 years and had the composure to prove it, explained with gentle clarity that the legal documentation had Ryan's name on it and could not be amended on the spot. What he could do, he said, was offer a blessing, a public acknowledgement of intention, witnessed by family and friends, with the understanding that the formal documentation could follow. Paige's father, a man named Tom Dalton, who repaired small engines for a living and had hands that looked like they'd fixed everything twice, stood up from the front row and looked at me for a long, specific moment. Then he nodded once, the kind of nod that means something. We stood there, Paige and I, while Father Connolly said words about commitment and witness and the difference between a promise and a ceremony. I looked at the side wall, where afternoon light was coming through a window in 3 long bars across the wood floor. I had helped design a chapel once, early in my career. I had thought about light exactly the way this building thought about light. I thought about that rather than thinking about what I was doing, which was standing at an altar next to my best friend, who had just been left by another man, holding a spearmint candy in my left hand. When it was over, Paige took my arm and we walked back down the aisle. I heard the applause start, scattered, and then growing, the kind that happens when people aren't sure what they witnessed, but know something real occurred. She didn't let go of my arm until we reached the door. Then, the reception happened anyway. This is what I've learned about weddings and the people who plan them. The food is already paid for, the flowers are already there, and nobody knows what to do with grief except feed it. Marcus found me at the bar approximately 40 minutes in. So, he said, don't. I'm just going to ask one question. Marcus, do you want to be here? Not in the building, in the situation. He set his glass down, looked at me directly, the way Marcus looked at things when he decided to stop being polite about them. Because there's a version of what you did today that's about Paige, and there's a version that's about you finally doing the thing you've been not doing for 3 years, and I need to know which one it is, because she's going to need to know too. There are questions that come with escape routes. This one had none that I could see from where I was standing. The bar was loud. Someone was playing music that was entirely too cheerful for the circumstances. I looked at my glass. Both, I said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Okay, he said. That's the right answer. The wrong answer would have been just one of them. He picked up his glass again. She asked about you, by the way, before all this, 6 months ago when she was doing the seating chart. She moved you 3 times. I looked at him. She moved me. Kept putting you near her and then moving you further away and then closer again. Just told me. He shrugged. Thought you should know. I thought about that. About a seating chart with my name on it, moved 3 times. About 7 years of spearmint candy and late-night calls, and a woman who remembered everything small about everyone, except apparently what she felt about me. I set down my glass, went to find her. She was on the patio, alone for the first time in 2 hours, sitting on a low stone wall with her shoes off, and her peonies across her lap, and a look on her face that I recognized. The stillness that came after the public composure, when the things she'd been holding finally had room to settle. I sat down beside her. Not too close, just there. For a while, neither of us said anything. The music came through the doors behind us, muffled and too cheerful. A string of lights along the patio edge swayed slightly in the evening air. He texted, she said finally. Ryan, while I was standing there, that's what Jess brought me. She turned the peonies over in her hands. 2 sentences. He said he was sorry and that he'd explain later. Has he explained? No. She picked at the edge of a petal. I don't think I want him to. I think if I hear the reason, it'll be something I can argue with. And I don't want to argue. I want to just... She stopped. Know that it happened. Put it somewhere. Move. I nodded. Caleb. She turned to look at me. Why did you actually walk up there? I had given her the chapel answer. The real answer had more pieces to it and had been sitting in the drawer with the dead batteries for approximately 3 years. Because I've been watching you take care of everyone for 7 years, I said, and I've never once seen anyone do it back. And I was tired of being a person who noticed that and didn't do anything about it. She looked at me carefully, the pharmacist look, the one that was trying to determine what was actually being said underneath what was being said. That's a very well-constructed sentence, she said. I'm an architect. I construct things. Caleb. Paige. Say it plainly. I had been left once by a woman who said I went somewhere when I got quiet. I had spent 3 years making sure I didn't go anywhere that mattered too much. I had designed buildings and kept policies and put things in drawers and attended a wedding I had no business attending because the alternative was not attending, which had turned out not to be an option at all. I have been in love with you, I said, for a very inconvenient amount of time, and I understand that today is not the day, and this is not how it's supposed to go, and I'm not asking you for anything. You asked me to say it plainly, so there it is. The patio lights swayed. The music inside played something that had nothing to do with any of this. Paige looked at her peonies for a long moment. You know what the worst part about today was, she said. What? Not Ryan. She looked up. The worst part was standing there and thinking, when you walked up that aisle, the worst part was thinking, too late. The silence changed. It's not too late, I said. I know. She looked at me. That was the other part. She reached into the small bag that was still, somehow, beside her, produced a spearmint candy, held it out in her palm. I looked at it, then at her. I don't need the candy, I said. I'm not the one who needs it tonight. She smiled, the real one. The one that started quiet and then arrived all the way, the kind that had been waiting for permission. She put the candy back. Okay, she said, then just sit here with me for a while. I did. We sat on that low stone wall until the lights inside went dim and the music stopped and the last car left the parking lot. She kept the peonies in her lap and I kept not saying anything else because it turned out I had already said the part that mattered and everything else could wait. In Schatzchen Trend. We didn't rush. This surprised some people. Marcus most audibly, Jess most persistently, but it didn't surprise me, and I don't think it surprised Paige. We had been doing the slow version of this for 7 years. There was no reason to suddenly act like we were in a hurry. The first week after the wedding, Paige stayed at her parents' house. Ryan had taken the coffee maker. She texted me about this on Wednesday with 3 separate opinions about it. I texted back, I have 2, come get one. She arrived Thursday evening with a box under one arm and the look of a woman who had spent 3 days being very organized about something that hurt. I gave her the good coffee maker, which she knew was the good one because she had been drinking coffee at my place for 4 years. And she put it in her box without making me feel like I'd done something generous, which is the specific skill of a person who has spent years accepting things gracefully. She stayed for dinner. We looked at the library sketches I was working on, a community project in Weaverville, and she had opinions about the reading room layout that were genuinely useful. And by 9 o'clock, she was on my couch going through the drawings with a red pen, which she absolutely did not have permission to do. Those are my drawings, I said. These are better drawings, she said. At the door on her way out, she stopped. Saturday wasn't just Saturday, she said. Then she left before I could figure out what to say, which was, I was fairly sure, intentional. And shape. The next 3 weeks had a particular texture to them. She came by twice more. Once to return a book she'd borrowed in July, once for no stated reason at all, arriving on a Sunday afternoon with a bag of groceries and announcing she was making soup because she'd made too much for one and would I like some. I said yes. She made soup. We ate it. She left. I sat in my kitchen afterward in the specific quiet of a man who has just shared soup with a woman he has been in love with for 3 years and said approximately none of the things he could have said. Marcus called on Monday. He said without preamble, "You stood at an altar in front of 200 people. You are not allowed to then eat her soup and say nothing. The soup was very good. Caleb, I don't want to rush it. You have been not rushing it for 3 years. At some point, not rushing is just standing still with better posture. He had a point. He generally did. She texted me that night. I used the coffee maker this morning. The coffee was exactly right. I'm choosing to believe this is a metaphor. I typed, a metaphor for what? She replied, I'll let you figure that one out. You're the architect. I put my phone down. I picked it up. I put it down. I figured it out. I sat down. We had dinner the following Thursday. Just the two of us, which was not unusual, except that this time we both knew what it was. She ordered the soup. I ordered the thing I always ordered. At one point, she reached across the table and fixed the collar of my jacket, a small, automatic gesture she'd done 100 times before, and then caught herself and looked at me like she was waiting to see if it meant something different now. You can still do that, I said. I know. She went back to her soup. I just wanted you to know I know. I told her about Claire. Not all of it. She knew most of it already. But the part I hadn't said before, about the policy, about the drawer, about deciding after November that the cost of opening certain doors was higher than I was willing to pay. She was quiet for a while after that. You've been keeping me in a drawer, she said. That's a somewhat uncharitable framing. Caleb, you put me in a drawer. I put the situation in a drawer. You were present at all times. She looked at me with the pharmacist expression. You know that's not better. I know. I looked at my plate. It was the best I could do at the time. She considered this, broke off a piece of bread, slid half across to me without asking, which she had been doing for 7 years, and which I realized I had never once taken for granted. The seating chart, she said. Marcus told me. I'm going to have words with Marcus. He also told me you moved me 3 times. She looked out the window. I moved you 4 times, actually. He missed the last one. She turned back. I put you at table 12, then 11, then 9, then 5. Table 5 is right next to where I was sitting. She picked up her bread. Then I moved you back to 9 because I thought I was being obvious. I looked at her. You moved yourself further away from me because you were afraid of being obvious. Yes, while I was keeping you in a drawer because I was afraid of the cost. Yes. We sat with that for a moment. We're both idiots, she said, in different but complementary ways. She laughed, the real laugh, the one that carried, and the couple at the next table glanced over and then looked away, smiling at nothing in particular. Which is what happens when 2 people sitting across from each other are finally not pretending about something. We went to Weaverville the following weekend. I had a site visit for the library, just a walkthrough, checking sight lines and angles, and the way the afternoon light actually landed versus how I'd drawn it. And I asked her if she wanted to come, and she said yes before I'd finished the sentence. She was quiet on the drive up, in the particular way she was quiet when she was thinking through something she hadn't decided yet, the kind of quiet I'd learned, over 7 years, not to interrupt. At the site, she walked through the empty rooms ahead of me, her coat pulled close, and when she got to the space I'd earmarked for the reading room, she stopped in the middle and turned slowly, looking up. The afternoon light came in exactly where she'd moved it on the sketches. She turned to look at me. You changed it, she said. You were right about the light. She looked back at the window. Something settled in her expression. Not the patio stillness, not the real smile, but the thing that came before both of them when she was absorbing something she hadn't expected. Caleb. Yes. I've been thinking about what you said, the drawer, the policy. She turned to face me fully. I did the same thing, different version. I told myself Ryan was fine and straightforward and that fine and straightforward were what I wanted. She paused. I think I picked fine and straightforward on purpose, because fine and straightforward couldn't cost me anything I wasn't prepared to lose. I understood that. I understood it precisely. And then I moved you to table 5, I said. And then I moved you to table 5. She looked at her hands. 4 times. The reading room was very quiet, dust in the afternoon light, the smell of old wood and new drywall, and the particular stillness of a building that doesn't know yet what it's going to become. I'm not going to put you back in the drawer, I said. She looked up. I'm done with the drawer, I said. I'm done with the policy. I know what this costs, and I'm choosing it anyway, and I need you to know that, so you're not waiting to see if I'll go somewhere quiet and not come back. She was still for a moment. Then she crossed the room and put her hand against my chest. Not a gesture of romance exactly, more the gesture of someone checking that something is real. You're here, she said. I'm here. She nodded once, stepped back, looked around the reading room one more time. The children's section is going to be wonderful, she said. I know, I said. We drove back as the light went flat and golden, and she fell asleep in the passenger seat, somewhere south of Weaverville, her head tipped toward the window, one hand open in her lap. I drove the rest of the way in the specific quiet of a man who has made a decision and is no longer afraid of what it costs. Ryan came back in October, not to the wedding, obviously. To the coffee shop on Lexington where Paige went every Saturday morning, which he knew because he had gone there with her for 11 months. I wasn't there when it happened. She told me that evening, sitting on my couch with her coat still on like she hadn't decided yet how long she was staying. He wants to talk, she said. About what? About whether it was real, whether we just panicked, whether... She stopped. He says he made a mistake. I kept my face neutral. This is something I am technically capable of. What did you tell him? I said. I told him I needed to think. She looked at me. Caleb, I'm not telling you this because I'm considering it. I'm telling you because you should know, and because I don't want to be the kind of person who has important conversations with someone else without the person sitting on their couch knowing about it. Okay, I said. That's it? Okay? What else do you want me to say? She turned to face me fully. I want you to say what you actually think, not the careful version, not the structurally sound version. There are moments when your body has more honesty than your mouth. This was one of them. I think, I said slowly, that Ryan is a decent man who did a genuinely terrible thing and is now experiencing the consequences and would like to undo them. And I think that is his problem. I looked at her. I also think that I have been in the same room as you for the last 5 weeks and have been conducting myself with a level of patience that I find personally impressive. And if you are considering going back to someone who sent you 2 sentences from a parking lot, I would like to register that as a structural concern. Paige stared at me. A structural concern, she said. It's how I express things. Caleb, her voice was very level. Did you just tell me not to get back with my ex-fiancé by using a load-bearing metaphor? Yes. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she took off her coat. I'm staying for dinner, she said, and I'm not calling Ryan back. She stood up and went to the kitchen. Do you have anything that isn't leftovers? There's soup. Of course there's soup. She opened the refrigerator. I'm not going back to Ryan, she said to the refrigerator. I want you to know that. Not because of you, because of me, because I was standing at an altar thinking about the wrong person, and the right person was 4 rows back. And I have been aware of that since September, and I'm done pretending I'm not. She closed the refrigerator, turned around, looked at me with the direct, unhurried gaze she used when she had decided something and was done negotiating with herself about it. Now, she said, soup or something else. There's pasta, I said. Pasta, she said, good. She started cooking. I sat at the counter and watched her move through my kitchen with the specific ease of someone who had been in a space enough times to know where everything was. And I thought about Ryan Cowell in a coffee shop on Lexington and the particular mercy of things that work out the way they were supposed to. Nay. The formal paperwork came 4 months later on a Tuesday morning at the county clerk's office on Main Street, with Marcus as our witness and Jess on speakerphone from Denver, where she had relocated in October and felt strongly that she should still be present in some capacity. It was nothing like a chapel. Drop ceiling, fluorescent lights, a clerk named Harold who had the demeanor of a man who had processed a great many documents and found them all equally interesting. We stood at a laminate counter and signed our names, and Harold said congratulations in the flat tone of someone whose job it was to say that to everyone and meant it to no one. And then we walked out into the November morning and stood on the sidewalk and looked at each other. So, Paige shied. So, I said. She reached into her coat pocket, produced a spearmint candy, held it out. I looked at it, then at her, then at the candy. I don't need the candy, I said. I don't need something to make this easier. This is already the easiest thing I've done in 3 years. She looked at the candy in her palm, then she put it back in her pocket. Then she stepped forward and kissed me. Not for a chapel, not for witnesses, not because anything needed saving. Just because she wanted to, on a Tuesday morning in November, outside the county clerk's office, with Harold presumably watching through the window and having no feelings about it either way. When we pulled back, she looked up at me. You know what the candy was for? She said. For people who need something in their hand when the hard part comes. Right. She patted her pocket. You didn't need it? No. Good. She took my hand instead. Let's go get coffee. We walked down the sidewalk in the November cold, past Harold's window and a bakery that was just opening, and a woman walking a dog that stopped to look at us with the calm assessment of a dog that has seen a great many people and knows when something has just become official. We got coffee. We sat in a corner booth with the November light coming through the window, and she put her hands around her mug and looked at me with the expression that had started as careful 7 years ago at a housewarming party and had moved, through soup and coffee makers and seating charts, moved 4 times in a September chapel and an afternoon reading room, all the way to something I did not have a word for yet, but recognized completely. Question, she said. Yes. The invitation, the one I sent you. She tilted her head. You kept it. It wasn't a question. She knew. She always knew the small things. I put it in the good drawer, I said, not the takeout drawer. She looked at me over her mug. The good drawer. With the scissors and the tape, the things I was actually going to use. She was quiet for a moment. Something moved across her face. Not quite the real smile, the thing that came just before it, when she was deciding whether she was ready to let it arrive all the way. That is, she said carefully, the most you thing I have ever heard. I know. The smile arrived, all the way this time, no permission required. Outside, the November morning went on being November, indifferent and cold and perfectly itself. I thought about 7 years of spearmint and a seating chart moved 4 times and a cream envelope I had put in the right drawer because some part of me had always known it belonged there. I'm not a man who says important things loudly. I design buildings. I think about how things hold together under pressure, which loads they're meant to carry, which ones will break them, what the difference is between a structure that resists what's coming and one built to move with it. Paige Dalton had been standing next to me for 7 years. I had been doing the math wrong the entire time. The cost was never in opening the door. The cost was every year I spent keeping it closed. What would you have done if you'd been sitting 4 rows back watching someone you'd been quiet about for 7 years stand alone at an altar? Have you ever let something stay in a drawer too long? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.